Hi everyone, we're coming to you live on Facebook. I'm Ashley Nordin, Education Developer here at Blick Art Materials. We're really excited to bring you this awesome Magnolia watercolor painting demonstration this evening. We're going to be using Utrecht Professional Artists Watercolors on a cradled 8x10 Aquabord by Ampersand. It's the perfect pair for everything watercolor, and you'll see that the board is incredibly absorbent and has a perfect texture for everything watercolor. I'm also going to be using Utrecht synthetic watercolor brushes this evening to paint in these washes and different saturations of color as we work through our painting. We'll top it off with a little bit of sketching with pen and ink, and we'll see this Magnolia come to life. Of course, we're doing a giveaway this evening for a $100 Blick e-gift card, so make sure that you take a moment to enter for a chance to win. All you're going to have to do is like this post, like this page, and follow us on Facebook. Also, let us know your response to the question prompt in our chat. And this evening's giveaway question is, what is your favorite spring flower? Let us know. My favorite spring flower right now is the Magnolia. I love the crisp cleanness and the uniqueness of the flower, and really loving diving into this project. So what's your favorite spring flower? Let us know in the chat and you'll be entered to win the giveaway. Also, don't forget to check out our bundle page, where you're going to find the reference image that we're going to be working from this evening of a Magnolia. It's a great starting point for reference, as well as a template to help you get started drawing. So both of those items on the bundle page, where you'll find the instructions and the materials all at your reference. So make sure to check that out. I think we can go ahead and get started, and let us know if you have any questions along the way. We'll be responding in the chat, and let's get started working on this 8x10 Aquabord. The first thing that we talked about was making a drawing. So this is my drawing that I made from reference from this image, and I made a copy of it. So this is the same size as the original. This is just a line drawing, and I'm going to show you how to quickly use this drawing to make a transfer onto your Aquabord. So I'm going to use the Sorel graphite transfer paper, and I'm going to tear a piece of it away, about the same size as where I'm working. Has graphite on one side and no graphite on the other, so you're going to set that graphite side down. I'm going to take a little bit of artist tape and tack it down so that it doesn't move while I'm working. Okay, one piece of tape here, one piece of tape here. Now, just set your drawing side up right on top of the board, and make the branch flush with the edge. Now take your pencil. I have an HB Blick Studio pencil, and you're just going to draw right over the lines of the drawing. And what this is going to do is it's going to push the graphite right down onto your Aquabord, and instantly you'll have your drawing created. So I'll show you quickly here a couple of petals, and we'll pull it away and we'll show you the transfer. Use some pressure when you're using the transfer paper. Pull this away, and then boom, your drawing is transferring right onto your board. Super fast, easy way to jumpstart your watercolor process with a great drawing. So let's set this to the side for now, because I've worked ahead for us, and we have a drawing already transferred right onto our board. This is what you should have. You've got some branches, maybe I left a little part out there. You got some branches, leaves, and your Magnolia flower, and boom, we're ready to begin. Let's go back to these artist watercolors. We're going to start by using a very transparent layer of color, and we're going to do that all over. I'd like to demonstrate a wet into wet painting technique here. And so I'm going to make a nice kind of purpley pink, you could say. It'll be very transparent, so I'm not using a lot of color, as you can see. As a rule of thumb, I like to use a 1:10 ratio, 1 part color to 10 parts water when I'm starting, and I don't know exactly how intense I want my color mixture to be. So I have those colors here. This is looking pretty dark, but I'm just going to test it right here. Let's add a little more water and then let's get started putting this down. Get that really nice and transparent mixture going. And I love this well palette for that purpose. I'm using the largest watercolor brush that I have of this assortment, which is around 10. And I'm going to work petal by petal, and I'm going to lay in this color. And we notice a lot of white on the magnolia flower in our reference image. So the goal with this transparent layer is to make a color that's light enough that it'll read as just off-white. And because your Aquabord is going to be very absorbent, you're going to want to keep this wash kind of in motion as you work petal over petal. So you want to keep it wet, so to speak, and all on one even plane. And get that worked in. Now, once you've got that initial wash down, the wet in wet technique means that you're taking the wet watercolor and applying it on the wet substrate. So if you want to deepen your colors, you can add more of that wash or more of a deeper saturated wash, and you can darken these areas. So let's work quickly to get these petals worked in with a color wash. I'm using the alizarin crimson. This is the Utrecht Artists color mixing set. I'm using the alizarin crimson mixed with just a touch of ultramarine blue mixed with water. Now, because I don't want my petals to touch as I'm working, because it's going to cause something called blooming, I'm going to make sure that I spread out the order of how I work on these petals. So I'm going to work over here, because once those two pools of watercolor start to touch, then they are going to want to combine. So we're isolating each petal and working one at a time. Now, if you're just joining us, or if you've been with us this whole time, we are doing a giveaway for a free $100 Blicky gift card. So make sure that you let us know your response to our prompt question this evening, which is, what's your favorite spring flower? We would love to know and get you entered for that giveaway. Make sure you like this post, like our page, and follow us on Facebook. Those are the requirements to enter. All right, so I'm working quickly and getting these parts filled in. Now what we're going to do once we get this initial wash layer laid in is we're going to work over it with a second layer once it has dried, or as many layers as you choose. Of course, we know when you're working in watercolor that you could do as many as 1 layer. You could do as many as 7 or 8 layers, depending on what your painting process is. So keep that in mind, that our next layer is going to be a deeper color saturation. And when I say color saturation, I mean the intensity of the color. So how much watercolor did you put in your mixture, in other words? All right, and get those really nice bright colors. Perfect. Let's get these worked in. The larger the brush you use for the larger shapes on your board, the easier time you're going to have getting that coverage filled in quickly. I do recommend in this step working quickly and getting the color laid down, and it will help you to work against that drying time. Because what we want when this layer is complete is we want it to be totally dry before we move on to the next layers. Now, because I want to avoid some of that blooming that we were talking about, I'm going to go ahead and start mixing my other colors because I don't want this to get too muddy in that first layer. So let's work quickly here. Let's take our Viridian that comes in our Utrecht Artists Acrylic package, and I'm going to start right over here, and we're going to do the same thing. I'm going to take this Viridian, I'm going to brighten it up with my lemon yellow because I have a nice bright green in my reference image. Make sure you check that out. We're working from observation, so we're always going back and we're looking at that reference image whenever we need to figure out what our next color combination is going to be. Make sure your brush is clean and that you have plenty of clean water. I like to have 2 cups of water and a pipette so that I can add water without having to clean my brush constantly, which is very helpful. And we easily brought that Viridian up to a nice bright spring green, which is perfect for our theme this evening. And I'm going to use this large brush and I'm going to keep working on these areas where I have leaves. And fill that in. Nice thing about having this nice light transfer, but clear, light but clear transfer, is that I can still see my drawing in this stage. Now, as I work, I'm going to lose some of that visibility, but that's totally fine because I really just need it to help me get started. And that is why I recommend going over to the bundle page, checking out that reference image, scoping out your resources, locating the materials that we're using here today. Because if you are a beginner watercolor painter, this is really the project for you. You have the design templates to help you get started, the reference image, and the artist mixing set by Utrecht, which is really your go-to set for starting out watercolors. Now, sometimes when your wet into wet areas get too close, like we did here, you might have some blooming and some mixing of washes. I can easily lift that. Keep that lifting technique in your back pocket as we work through this piece. And also try to avoid where you might have too much color, like on this leaf here. Let's try to get some of that dispersed. We have other leaves here. Some of these little details, I can pull some of this color up. They don't require a lot of color. I can keep working quickly. Very easy to start, not very intimidating, right? Just a quick drawing and some quick wash layers to start. All right, so there's my leaves. I'm really liking those, and I've got a little bit of green, I know, on the branch of the magnolia flower itself. Now, let's go back to finishing up our petals now that they've been drying slightly. With this nice light wash. As the color dries, it's going to lighten on the board. That's really what we want. Get it nice and light, and then those next layers can be your intense color saturated layers. All right. And if you have questions for us while I'm working up here, let us know in the chat. We'll be there to respond to your questions about the process and the product, our Utrecht products that we're using here. Make sure you get all that information filled in. And again, if I want to dab in more color, I can do that at any time. Depends on how you're approaching it. All right, we have a couple of other colors that we want to tackle, that we're going to start thinking about. One of those colors is going to be the branch. So let's wrap up our flower petals and let's start moving into that Magnolia branch. It's really going to help this piece start to come to life. All right. I love this wash step where you're just hinting at what is about to happen, building up that excitement. All right. Petal by petal, and try to keep them isolated as much as possible. You can leave white for highlight if you'd like in this step. All right, that was fast. Let's get this branch color mixed. I'm going to use the raw sienna to start. It's nice and light, and I can always darken it however I'd like to. I'm going to work in this palette down here. I love this palette because it has a lot of wells. I can make a lot of different washes that are similar, using the same colors but make them more intense as I work my way through the palette. Just a little teeny tiny bit of ivory black to darken that raw sienna. Take your pipette and add the clean water into the well, plenty of it. And we've got a nice brown starting, nice light brown. You always want your bottom layers to be lighter than the top layers. Get a smaller brush, remembering that we want to use the right brush for the right size area. Okay, now we're ready. Let's take this and let's get this branch going. This is the raw sienna and a little bit of ivory black. You can punch it up or down. I might even like it a little bit lighter. So I'm going to just set that up here. Quickly and easily can move through these washes on this palette. All right, let's get that down. Perfect. Blend using that wet and wet technique, taking the wet color and placing it right back over where you just laid that wash down. So let's get that filled in. This is the round size 4 brush that I've switched to. The Utrecht synthetic watercolor brushes that are available on our bundle page. Make sure you go and check that out. And don't forget to enter for our giveaway this evening. We're super excited to give away a $100 Blick gift card. Don't forget to respond to our question prompt this evening, which is, what's your favorite spring flower? Clearly, ours this evening is the Magnolia, but how can you choose just one flower? All right, we're doing great. We've got that initial color wash down. Now, let's set up our background, the sky, with an incredibly transparent light blue wash. I'm going to work in this palette right here. Just a dab of this ultramarine blue, and we're going to use the 1-inch wash brush. This is that heavy duty, wanting to cover a large area kind of brush. That's what we want. I'm going to get some clean water and make sure it's nice and transparent because I don't want it to show up too violet. I mean, it's totally up to you, or too ultramarine blue rather. It's totally up to you, the color intensity. I like a nice light sky that's kind of subtle. And we're going to work quickly just to block in this area. And it just, you can leave your background white, of course, for that crisp cleanness as well. But I think that this can help to put your artwork into a setting, you know, help to develop a mood like springtime. That's definitely the mood that I'm in, is, you know, looking forward to that beautiful weather and looking forward to seeing all the flowers in bloom once again here this year. So to honor that, we're doing this spring themed watercolor flower painting this evening, and we're just blocking the ultramarine blue wash in with our 1-inch wash brush. Of course, we have a variety of sizes that you can choose from. You don't have to limit yourself to just one. Definitely try an assortment of brushes, because you want to fit the right brush with the right size and shape of the object that you're painting. So if you're a beginner painter and you're wondering how to choose the right brush, that's what you need to think about. What am I going to paint? How big is it? And what shape? And that is really going to help guide you on your brush search. I don't want to get it too close to the edge because I don't want too much blooming. But of course, some of us loose floral watercolor painters like that. So that's really an aesthetic that's up to you. And by blooming, I mean that two different color or even the same color washes meet when they're still wet, and then they bloom, and you get that kind of blossoming watercolor look. So let's do a couple more things here while the board is still workable, and then we're going to show you how to get some detail worked into your artwork. And to do that, I'm going to take some Utrecht permanent white gouache. I'm going to mix these two types of paint, which are 100% compatible. This is a traditional gouache. I'm going to mix right down here. This is a traditional gouache, so there's no acrylic component. It's just a pigment-loaded watercolor with a gum arabic binder. So it's the exact same binder as your watercolor. That's the only difference, is that it's loaded with pigment. So if you're out there wondering what the answer to that burning question is, what's the difference between watercolor and gouache? Gouache has more pigment, but the binder is the same. So I'm combining the permanent white with the ultramarine blue wash, and I have this really cloudy, dreamy, just slightly off-white mixture, and I'm just going to make sure it's nice and blended. And with this, I'm going to go right back to my board, and I'm going to get up close to the edge, and I'm just going to blend using my large round brush and fill in some of these edge lines. Getting these edge lines nice and clean is really going to help you along the way. Now, I like some of these brush strokes that I see in the background, but you can also take your, because I'm working up close to the edge, but you can also take your flat wash and put a nice smoothing layer right over the background. See how it just smooths everything out? The watercolor tends to be very staining. So that's why when you put it down stark on the white board, it creates a stain right away. And with this gouache layer, you're giving it a chance to kind of redistribute. And with that pigment-loaded white, it takes away some of that harsh brush stroke. And I really appreciate that because I like that smoothness. I like a subtle brush stroke. I don't necessarily like a harsh brush stroke, but that really depends on what part of the painting you're working on. So we've been using transparent washes up to this point, and that's taken us really far in terms of getting this imagery started. And I don't want to use too much water. on this background layer, because truly one of the things that you're going to want to keep in mind with this painting that we were just discussing prior to this evening's demo is really, it's about the drying times. It's really about observing the drying times and making the watercolor intensity work for you. So that's all we're doing here. Now at this point, you can apply as many touch-ups to your wash layer as you want. So if we want to darken, and I'm just going to show you a quick example before we move on to our midway point step. And that's going to be at the point which you've gotten your colors intense and saturated as much as you like. For example, let's add a little more here, because that's where we know our shading to be. The more we do this, the more we get closer to that level of detail that we want. Don't be afraid to make a brush stroke really happen, and let that stain the board where you think it needs to be darker. And I'm still working in isolation from the other petals. Careful not to touch. And trying to reduce some of that blooming that we were talking about earlier. Now let's go in here. Let's make a quick decision to set out the eye of the Magnolia, where it's incredibly dark, and we're going to darken that using our alizarin crimson. Let's keep with that. Let's start working toward those more saturated colors that we were talking about before, where as we move through, we gain color saturation. So there's slightly less water in this mixture. I'm going to go ahead and get it combined. And I might want to take a smaller brush, because that's what's going to fit in the space I'm working in. And it's still a little wet, which is perfect. So let's just dab in. This is your wet into wet technique. The watercolor is still wet on the board. The Aquabord is doing a really nice job of keeping it at just the right wetness for us. It's all about that timing. So there's some color intensity, right? Just to make that pop. Bring that intensity into your darkest parts of the flower. And we just love watching watercolors move on the page, right? We love being able to see where those watercolors are going in real time. It is so fascinating, I think, to be able to see this wet into wet technique in action. I'm getting really good color saturation. And I'm just hinting at some of this shading. And this is my round 6. And the round 6 might be your most versatile brush. Definitely keep that in your back pocket as you're working. All right, now let's go back over to our other flower. Let's work in some of these details. I'm always looking at my reference image for some of that information that I can pull into my watercolor. Because as soon as I start looking away and stop referencing it, I start making things up. So I don't want to make up too much information here. I just want to get enough so that we can move on to our next step, which is going to be working wet and dry, which will mean that our board is dry. So once you get this initial layer down, you're going to want to let it dry. Now you can use a heat gun, you can use a blow dryer, you can speed up the drying time. Just make sure that you're working on a flat level surface. Let's get some of these shaded in. But this, when the watercolor is this wet and workable, is your opportunity to enhance with a little bit of shading, which is what we're doing right here. Just a little bit of that shading goes a long way. Okay, it also helps to kind of differentiate between your petals. So which petal starts where? Always good.
We're about 30 minutes in if you want to remind everyone about the giveaway.
Yeah, definitely. Yes, now that we're about 30 minutes in, I want to kindly remind everyone that we are doing a $100 Blick e-gift card giveaway, and it's extremely easy to enter to win. All you have to do is like this post, like our Facebook page, and follow us on Facebook. That's easy. And then let us know your response to our question prompt this evening, which is, what is your favorite spring flower? My favorite spring flower at the moment that I'm looking forward to seeing are the magnolias. Those beautiful trees with, you know, the incredibly impressive blooms. That's what I am looking forward to seeing, and I cannot wait until the spring. Let us know. You'll be entered to win that giveaway, and you can also check out our bundle page, where we have the reference image ready for you, a template to help you get started drawing, and a resource with all of the materials that you're going to need to get started. Now I can also do just a little bit of shading here by pulling out some of that darker color that we've applied and just smoothing that out along the board. All right. Now, one other technique that I want to show you is, again, going back to our gouache. I want to show you, before we start to move on to our next step, we have a lot of white in this flower, and I'm going to go back to this permanent white that we have here. I'm going to, I think we only just need a little bit, so let's just put a little bit on this palette here. We have all these wells that we can work with, and I'm just going to do a little bit of highlighting with the white. It doesn't have to be too intense. This is just going to go on our magnolia here, and similarly to the background that we just painted, where we cleared away some of that harsh brush stroke and we added some cloudiness and highlight, we're going to do that same thing here. And this is totally optional, but in a transparent layer, you can lay that gouache right over your flower petals, and all of a sudden that color comes together blended and beautiful, right? So all the control that you're getting by adding in this super easy to use white gouache is just going to help to give you that glossiness. Now, if you're a watercolor painter out there and you're thinking, you know, well, I don't use white with my watercolors, I leave my highlights white. I think that's completely doable in this project as well. Certainly, if you want to leave a white highlight, it's going to look beautiful no matter what. So this is completely optional. I like the white gouache because, one, I want to show you how similar these two products are and help you to dispel some of the mystery around gouache and how to use it and when. But also, I just really like that smoothness, that really kind of gives it more of an illustrative effect. And you can't fail with the white gouache. In fact, if you're having any troubles with some of these areas that you're working with, use it as a blending tool. Think of it that way. Certainly you can use a white watercolor, you can use anything that you want for the highlighted areas, but it's just so easy to pull this off with a little bit of that white gouache. And that's what kind of gives it that pop up against the background of your painting that we've just worked in here. So you can continue to use that gouache to your liking as a blending tool and something to really help you along. Now, all you want to do at this stage is you're going to want to continue to saturate use a smaller brush, you're going to want to continue to saturate your colors. This is the process. Working layer over layer to saturate these colors is how you're going to get the intensity that you want and the highlight that you want. So I'm going to work over, and with each layer, we're going to get darker and darker. Okay, and we're applying here. The Aquabord is holding up perfectly. Ampersand has an incredible line of innovative substrates that are absolutely ideal for any kind of painting project that you are starting into. So check them out. Don't limit yourself to what you feel like is the most traditional substrate or the easiest to use substrate. You really want to branch out and try some of these other options, because we're living in a new time with art supplies, and the Ampersand line is definitely helping us to get there. So let's get some more clean water. I'm going to make a darker green. I'm just going to saturate that layer, and then we're going to move on to our last step, because the one takeaway that I want you guys to have, one of the takeaways that I want you guys to have in this presentation is that you don't have to nail your watercolor with the first pass. Now, of course, wouldn't it be great if every time we went to go do a watercolor, we nail that transparency, we nail the color saturation? Ideally, that's what happens, but let's be honest, we need to build a map, a roadmap to get there. And we can do that. We just need to put the right layers down with the right timing. That's really what it is. It's the timing, it's the color saturation, and it's making those pieces work together. I'm going to get a larger brush, and we're working pretty quickly. So let's keep moving. I'm going back to my round size 10. I want to get it nice and clean, because if not, I'm going to get that muddiness and brown from mixing the red and green together. Now, you can just work layer over layer. And then look how much brighter we can go. Maybe you like the lightness. I like to work in a way that eventually conceals my drawing. You can, of course, lighten that drawing with an eraser. So if you're thinking, no, that's just way too dark, just lighten it. The whole drawing will transfer, but you may want to lighten that up. Okay, so just a couple more leaves. And this is going to take us to our midway point, or at least to the point where we're ready to polish off this watercolor. But I just love these starting out steps so much. Okay, So now we have a solid start. It's looking great. Let's keep moving. Keep working on adding in that shading and using the wet on dry technique to exact the shading. We used the wet into wet technique to start out and get our colors start to be saturated. Now, when they're dry and you've got that detail starting to work in, you're going to have something that looks a little more like this. And you can see how much work, how much good work that gouache is doing on this layer. We've got some really beautiful blending happening here, and we're totally ready to put that slap that final detail layer on. And before we do that, we're going to want to use a Micron pen to pull out some of the details that might get lost along the way. This is a really microscopic, no pun intended, nib that we're using on this Micron pen. And all I'm going to do here is on a bone dry Aquabord is just bring out some of these edge lines. And a lot of watercolor artists are using pen and ink processes to just enhance the drawing. I'm not wanting to take over any one area by heading in with this Micron, but I have these really delicate and beautiful edge lines that I can pull out and show off some of this crispness of the drawing. Okay, and it's really just to help to separate your elements so you can see now we've got that crispness around our leaves. And while I'm doing some of this detail work, I just want to remind everyone, one, go check out the bundle page, because the Micron Pen, the Utrecht Artists Acrylics, the Ampersand Aquabord, all these things that we're using and that we're really excited about are all going to be on that bundle page, along with the instructions. So if you like having a little bit of that written instruction along with the video playback when you go to make this watercolor, I think you're really going to love having that extra resource and the ability to get all of those materials with one click. But also, we're going to be announcing the giveaway winner at the end of the presentation. So make sure that you took a moment to enter by liking this post, liking our Facebook page and following us, and also let us know your response to the question prompt this evening, which is, what's your favorite spring flower? Now that's probably an answer that you'll have an easy time coming up with, because I know that we're all looking forward to spring. I know we're all waiting for those flowers to bloom if they haven't already. And the magnolia is one of my favorite spring flowers. They're just an exotic, beautiful flower that grows on a tree. So we have these lovely branches that we can paint. Wonderful inspiration for painting. Okay, and I think it's clear to see how much work that Micron just did. Just helping to clear up some of the cloudiness. So now, one last step. You can go back in with your watercolor washes as you've worked on making them more intense as you progress through your painting. Or maybe you want to go back to some of those initial washes. And we're going to go in with a detail brush, and we're just going to add in our final thoughts, so to speak, final highlights, final details. And you can see where the Micron is standing out, and you're going to want to blend a little bit around those areas just to make that transition from drawing to painting look very natural. So just a little bit on the branches here. Perfect. Let's wrap up our leaves with a little bit of detail. I'm going to take this green. I like the saturation of this color. And we're just going to draw in some of these veins. Very subtle. Keep it simple. It is watercolor. You don't have to work too hard. Of course, hard work gets us very far, but we don't have to work too hard in this last step to nail some of that detail and really bring it forward. All right, so there's our leaves. Got a leaf back here. All right, last but not least, let's get some detail on these flowers. Just a few little lines. We've got a lot of detail already, and maybe this is a stopping point for you. You know, that's another thing to take away from any watercolor painting is, you know, where to stop. And I know that that can be difficult. I am one of those people. I want to go back in and tweak it and tweak it and tweak it until I get it just how I want it. Sometimes that pays off. Sometimes it's just belaboring what might already be done. So we're just bringing out the highlights. We're going to take this intense area, we're going to darken it, really make it stand out. And I'm not too worried about the detail inside of there. I can tell that it's the inside of the flower. All right. And pretty soon we'll be announcing the winner of the giveaway in the chat. So I hope you had a chance to enter for our giveaway. I'm super happy with where I'm going to be able to leave this painting off and pass it off to you all so that you can pick it up and get started with your own Utrecht watercolor paints and gouache. Don't forget to print out that reference image. We're so excited that you were able to join us this evening. I think we're all set. We hope that you come back and join us on Thursday afternoon at 4 p.m. for our next Facebook Live. I had so much fun, and we look forward to seeing you on Thursday.